Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Life at the Lake Campus podcast, where today I have Dr. Stephen Jacquemin with me. He is a professor here at the Lake Campus of Biology and Water Quality. So Stephen, thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, Josh. Thank you very much for inviting me.
All right, so I don't know if you know this, but this is kind of a special podcast today because you're my first non-student that I've interviewed. But when I started this podcast up, I wanted to get a whole range of people because I'm trying to show people, first off, what the students' paths are on their different career types, but also what kind of stuff's going on here at the Lake Campus in terms of the ways in which the community can be impacted, because we're doing a lot of stuff here that a lot of people aren't aware of. And you have been doing a lot of things in relation to like the lake and stuff, which we're going to get to that in a second. But before we do, I was wondering if you could just give us a quick little intro to yourself.
Be happy to. I grew up in Ohio. I spent way too much time outside, hiking, hunting, fishing, camping, backpacking, you name it. Just spending time outdoors, and from those sort of, formative years being outside, I think I developed a lifelong love slash obsession with nature and the environment. And I've sort of, being outdoors, that's always been kind of my happy place. And so I've done my best over my life to kind of leverage those experiences and leverage those passions into doing something I really love. And so, as I moved into college, I focused on biology and environmental studies. I have bachelor's degrees from Ohio Northern University, small liberal arts school outside of Lima. I have a master's degree and a PhD from Ball State University, and I have a certificate of environmental management from the University of Havana in Cuba.
So what part of Ohio did you end up growing up in, where you went all on your hikes and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I grew up in Delaware, just north of Columbus, but my favorite natural spaces in the state of Ohio, it's got to be southeastern Ohio. It's got to be Hocking. I mean, it's just Hocking Hills is absolutely incredible. Zaleski backpacking trail, Lake Hope. I mean, that area of the state to me is a special place.
That's what came to mind when you said you were hiking around. Everybody who's been in Ohio for a few years eventually makes it right down there, and we go there quite a bit with my family. I love that place. It's a beautiful area. So how'd you end up in Cuba?
I ended up in Cuba in sort of the early 2000s, and I ended up going there to work with the University of Havana to help do some environmental assessments of the nearshore marine habitat. So I worked with coral reefs, a little bit of open ocean habitat, but mostly it was nearshore kind of reef habitat. I'd live on a boat for weeks at a time, and my goal was to do these assessments of the health and integrity of the reefs. There's all kinds of implications of that, but one of the primary ones is when you have an economy that's in part based on resources from the sea, you have to make sure your seas are healthy and sustainable. So I did a lot of work with sort of whole ecosystem surveys, and then I also did a lot of work with apex predator surveys. And in coral reef environments, that meant large pelagic sharks. So I did work with those and assess those populations. Some of the populations hadn't really been looked at since the days of Jacques Cousteau.
So how long did you end up spending in Cuba?
A little bit less than a year I was there. I lived I lived at sea for quite a bit of that, and then when I wasn't at sea, I lived in a little neighborhood called Vedado, and that was down the street from the university. So I worked in the Centro de Investigaciones Marinas and worked with a scientist there, and then I also not only did work on reefs and environmental management, but I also was able to take classes, took a lot of classes. Took a lot of classes in a variety of different fields from the university while I was there, and all those sorts of those classes and those practical experiences, those all sort of contributed to that environmental certificate.
I've been working with you for like almost 6 years now. I had no idea you ever spent time in Cuba, so that's really kind of cool. So, what brought you to Lake Campus then? How long ago did you start here, and what have you been up to since?
Yeah, I've always been interested in whole communities. Whole environmental communities, whole groups of fishes, whole groups of birds, whole groups of, this, that, and the other thing. And so, my passion with whole community ecology work, it's really kind of rests here in the Midwest, rest here in the Great Lakes and the Ohio River basins. And so while it was wonderful to to work in marine systems for a spell, I also spent some time living down in Georgia and Florida, and I worked in the Okefenokee Swamp, dealing with that system. But the reality is, I wanted to come back to this region. I like the environment, and the variation in the environment up here. And so once I sort of finished things up down there, I wanted to come back do my grad school work up here in the Midwest. Did my grad school work on the Wabash River, developed a love for that ecosystem, and so when I found a position that was open at Lake Campus sits pretty much at the headwaters of the Wabash River. The Grand Lake watershed dumps into it. It was a really natural transition. One of the things that I love most about where I am right now is, and I do enjoy the research, but I love the chance to communicate science with students. I love the teaching aspect. At Lake Campus, we're able to afford time for both creative research as well as teaching. And it's a nice split.
One of the things that almost every student that's been on this podcast so far has said is that they really appreciate how we have either smaller classes or the professors here that are willing to communicate with them at the individual level. So do you see the same kind of thing from the professor side?
I do, absolutely. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I have taught the big lectures, and it's a very different experience. I feel like as a professor, I'm at my best when there's a smaller number in the room. I think students are at their best when there's a smaller number of their peers in the room. I think you get a lot more personal attention, and I think the implications for student success, recruitment, retention, those are obvious and those are positive.
I've been there too. I think the biggest class that I ever taught was when I was a graduate student at Bowling Green. I taught a 300-person lecture, and I guess it's cool in one aspect that you get to talk to so many people at once, but at the same time, it's like you don't get to know any of them on a personal level. Like maybe the one or two students that hang around at the end of class, but like here, I know the names of all my students. I know what a lot of them are doing for jobs. You can see them out in public and say, hey. So I think that's one of the things I enjoy the most about working here. So what kind of things go on in the lab that you run right now?
It's all water quality research. And primarily here in the Midwest, the majority of water quality research revolves around understanding nutrients, how they move across the landscape, and how they contribute to harmful algal blooms. Harmful algal blooms are one of the largest and most emerging sort of environmental concerns that we've faced in the last couple of decades. They really are emerging as a global phenomenon. Harmful algal blooms are proliferation or blooms, excessive growth of particular species of alga. And unfortunately, certain species of alga, in particular cyanobacteria, have the potential to produce toxins. So they can not only dominate an ecosystem in their biomass and in the low species diversity, but they can also affect an ecosystem through the production of toxins. And harmful algal blooms are on the rise on a global scale. They're on the rise here in the Midwest, and they are fueled by nitrogen phosphorus runoff. So the work we do in this lab is we try to understand different sustainable practices that we can do as people living in this world to try to mitigate these nutrient runoff trends, to try and bring down HAB frequency.
Are there any specific type of toxins that you're kind of referring to here? Like, can you like dumb it down for people like me who are
Sure.
zero experience with this stuff?
Sure, and there's a variety of different what are called congeners, or you can think about them like flavors of these toxins. But primarily here in the Grand Lake region, the alga produce a particular toxin called microcystin. Alga in other places, whether it's the Great Lakes or whether it's in marine systems, there can be anatoxins, there can be saxitoxins, but regardless, these cyanotoxins or these HAB toxins, they can affect neurological function, they can affect liver function, they can irritate the skin, and these things can be lethal in the right dose. And in fact, there have been plenty of examples, some involving livestock, some involving humans, of serious health complications.
All right, so I know you said you had some students working in your lab. What kind of stuff do they do then if they're coming into your lab getting some experience? And how, if there's somebody out there interested in it, how do they get involved?
Students are the backbone of this lab. we couldn't run without students. Students in this lab, it's all undergraduate students, and students can expect to get involved from day one with everything. If you're asking, what do the students get involved in, my answer is yes. My answer is yes, because students are involved with every part of the process of research. They're taught the process of scientific inquiry. They're taught how to do research, how to think about research in the natural world. They're given time to be creative in their research endeavors. They're able to develop their own projects. They're able to contribute to long-standing projects. They go out and they collect water samples. They do it by boat. They do it by car. It just depends on the site. They collect water samples. They analyze those water samples. They learn chemical analyses. They learn report writing. And they learn how to synthesize complex data and be able to communicate that with the community so that everybody is lifted up by the work and everybody understands what contributes to water quality.
Do you have any prerequisites that you look for when having students come work in the lab?
I really don't. I don't have any prerequisites. The only obvious thing is I want students that have a desire to learn, and if you're coming to work in a lab, that requisite is pretty much met, by virtue of walking in the door.
All right, so we're going to shift topics here a little bit, but still stay on the same general area. I know you do some work with the Lake Restoration Commission. Would you mind telling us what exactly that body does, and is there stuff about the lake that the community should know?
And the Lake Restoration Commission is a group of community volunteers, and it's people from a variety of walks of life. You've got folks like me from academia. You've got folks from Soil and Water. You've got folks from the Community and Economic Development Office. You've got folks from ODNR that serve on that. We have some representatives from NRCS, from the Ohio Department of Agriculture, from EPA, and we also have some folks that are we have some real estate experts that help with when we look at restoring a property. They can help with that. We've got some people from all different walks of life that come together. We meet monthly, and effectively what we do is we keep a conversation and a dialogue going between people here locally that are actually testing the water and looking at the water and understanding the water, as well as people at a higher state level. People from the state level of DNR and EPA and ODA and Department of Health, they'll actually come to those meetings every single month, and we'll make sure that everybody stays informed on all the topics of water quality. In terms of if there's anything the community should know, various members of the LRC really make every effort in the world to keep everything shared with the public and keep everything transparent. The best place to sort of get those updates is at the monthly Lake Improvement Association meetings. Those are the first Saturday of every month. You check the Facebook page, Lake Improvement Association. First Saturday of every month at the Moose here in Salina. But you'll see, typically you'll see either myself or maybe Dave Failer from ODNR, or perhaps Teresa Dirksen from the county. You'll see, one of the three of us, sometimes, a couple of us at that meeting sharing updates that relate to how's the lake doing, what's the condition like, what's the algae like, what's the toxin level, how much algae is there, how toxic is it, what's the runoff forecast like, how much nitrogen and phosphorus are fueling the algal bloom, what are the conservation practices like in the watershed, how many do we have, how many are we getting this year, how many do we have projected for the future, and how are they behaving. All the students that went out and assessed how effective those wetlands are, maybe those edge of field practices are. We'll give reports at that monthly meeting to the public and make sure that everybody, in the entire community, because it affects everybody, is as up to date and informed as possible.
So you said you give the reports to the public. Are the meetings themselves just open to the public? Anybody can show up?
Of course. Yep.
Cool.
I believe there's coffee and donuts available.
I mean, it makes it even better.
It does.
So people often kind of associate professors with you come into work every day, you go, you give a lecture, grade some papers and stuff, but there's a lot more to the job than just teaching. So what other types of things are you involved in around campus?
Well, I work with Angela Clayton to help coordinate the integrated science program, and I believe that'll be the subject of a future podcast, but helping to coordinate a full-time Bachelor's of Science degree right here at the Lake. It's a 4-year Bachelor's of Science program with um, different tracks of study. One is a pre-health professional track, one is environmental earth and life track, and one is an agricultural science track. And I help to coordinate that. So that takes up a good bit of time, making sure things are operating smoothly, and we're promoting the program and things of that nature. Um, Beyond that, I serve on a variety of committees, a variety of academic committees. A lot of stuff that maybe from the outside seems boring, but when you get into it, it's kind of the stuff that helps the university run kind of day to day. I help out and serve with the promotion and tenure committee. I help serve on the research committee, and whenever there's events and things like that on campus, or there's opportunities on campus to help support those opportunities, I do my best to be there to sort of show support for whoever's doing whatever. I'll be out there. If somebody's out painting the rock, I'm going to go out and and help or bug them. Or if somebody's hosting this event or that event, I'm going to do my best to make it there.
That's awesome. I think that's one of the great things about this campus. Is like it seems like everybody's willing to do their fair share and go support any type of event that we can, and it really gives a real strong sense of community, I think, around the lake. So, as somebody who's been a student at the undergrad level and the master's and PhD, you've been through all of it. Do you have any advice for students out there right now? Because so far I've been asking the students themselves what kind of advice would they give their fellow students, but from the professor side, what would you want to tell your students?
Do what you love. Do what you love. Find something you love. Find something you love, and something you're truly passionate about. And somebody's written that on a calendar 1,000 times. You got a picture of a cat hanging from like a ledge or whatever, or you've got that's sort of the guidance counselor mantra. But honestly, it's true. Like if you're miserable, if you're miserable with what you're doing, it's going to be you can do the math there. The goal is to just identify something that you're truly passionate about, and whatever you're worried about later, that stuff is gonna follow. Okay, so if you're worried about some goal of what about money, or what about this, or what about that, just one step at a time. And that first step has got to be, you got to be happy with what you're doing.
Awesome advice. So clearly you're passionate about what you're working with and you love doing it. And I think all the students are incredibly lucky to have somebody like you teaching them and giving them opportunities in a lab like this. So that's all the questions I have for you right now. Is there anything else that you kind of want to talk about before we wrap up?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, this entire interview, I've been asking you questions. I've been looking over your shoulder. I see that little March Madness bracket trophy. So it's a little shout out to your water quality
That's
lab.
right.
You guys won it last year, and we're about to head into it tomorrow.
We had 3 entries last year. I'd like to note that one of our entries got first place, another entry got third place, and the other entry did not get last. So we expect for a repeat this year. I believe we have 4 people from the lab that contributed brackets.
I remember right. You guys were the first ones to turn some in. I came to my office the other morning. They were already there.
We turned them in before the play-in games were finished.
All right. So
Go Owls.
we will wrap it up there. And as with every ending of these podcasts, if anybody has any recommendations or any questions, shoot me an email and let me know. And if not, I will talk to everybody in the next one.